Were there wild animals? And perhaps wild people, too, on my island? I didn't know, but I was very afraid. So I decided to build a very strong fence. I cut down young trees and put them in the ground, in a half-circle around the front of my tent. I used many of the ship's ropes, too, and in the end, my fence was as strong as a stone wall. Nobody could get over it, through it, or round it. Making tents and building fences is hard work. I needed many tools to help me. So I decided to go back to the ship again and get some more things. I went back 12 times, but soon after my 12th visit, there was another terrible storm. The next morning, when I looked out to sea, there was no ship. When I saw that, I was very unhappy. Why am I alive? And why are all my friends dead? I asked myself. What will happen to me now, alone on this island without friends? How can I ever escape from it? Then I told myself that I was lucky. Lucky to be alive. Lucky to have food and tools. Lucky to be young and strong. But I knew that my island was somewhere off the coast of South America. Ships did not often come down this coast, and I said to myself, I'm going to be on this island for a long time. So, on a long piece of wood, I cut these words. I came here on the 30th of September, 1659. After that, I decided to make a cut for each day. Chapter 5. Learning to live alone. I still needed a lot of things. Well, I said, I'm going to have to make them. So every day I worked. First of all, I wanted to make my cave bigger. I carried out stone from the cave, and after many days' hard work, I had a large cave in the side of the hill. Then I needed a table and a chair, and that was my next job. I had to work on them for a long time. I also wanted to make places to put all my food and all my tools and guns. But every time I wanted a piece of wood, I had to cut down a tree. It was long, slow, difficult work. And during the next months, I learnt to be very clever with my tools. There was no hurry. I had all the time in the world. I also went out every day, and I always had my gun with me. Sometimes I killed a wild animal, and then I had meat to eat. But when it got dark, I had to go to bed because I had no light. I couldn't read or write because I couldn't see. For a long time, I didn't know what to do. But in the end, I learnt how to use the fat of dead animals to make a light. The weather on my island was usually very hot, and there were often storms and heavy rain. It rained all the time. and I couldn't go out very often. I was also ill for some weeks, but slowly I got better. When I was stronger, I began to go out again. The first time, I killed a wild animal, and the second time, I caught a big turtle. I was on the island for 10 months before I visited other parts of it. During those months, I worked hard on my cave and my house and my fence. Now I was ready to find out more about the rest of the island. First, I walked along the side of a little river. There I found open ground without trees. Later, I came to more trees with many different fruits. I decided to take a lot of the fruit and to put it to dry in the sun for a time. Then I could keep it for many months. That night, I went to sleep in a tree for the second time, and the next day I went on with my journey. Soon, I came to an opening in the hills. In front of me, everything was green, and there were flowers everywhere. There were also a lot of different birds and animals. I saw that my house was on the worst side of the island, but I didn't want to move from there. It was my home now. I stayed away for 3 days, and then I came home. But I often went back to the other, greener side of the island. And so my life went on. Every month, I learnt to do or to make something new. But I had troubles and accidents too. Once there was a terrible storm with very heavy rain. The roof of my cave fell in and nearly killed me. I had to build it up again with many pieces of wood. I had a lot of food now. I cooked it over a fire or dried it in the sun. So I always had meat during the rainy months when I could not go out with a gun. I learnt to make pots to keep my food in. But I wanted very much to make a harder, stronger pot, a pot that would not break in a fire. I tried many times, but I could not do it. Then one day I was lucky. I made some new pots and put them in a very hot fire. They changed colour, but did not break. I left them there for many hours, and when they were cold again, I found that they were hard and strong. That night I was very happy. I had hot water for the first time on the island. By then, I also had my own bread. That was luck too. One day I found a little bag. We used it on the ship to keep the chickens' food in. There was still some of the food in the bag, and I dropped some of it onto the ground. A month later, I saw something bright green there. And after 6 months, I had a very small field of corn. I was very excited. Perhaps now I could make my own bread. It was easy to say, but not so easy to do. It is a lot of work to make bread from corn. Many people eat bread, but how many people can take corn from a field and make bread out of it without help? I had to learn, and to make many new things, and it was a year before I cooked and ate my first bread.
Xóa nó, có xóa nó chứ.
During all this time, I never stopped thinking about escape.
Đi, qua đập nó.
When I travelled across to the other side of the island,
Không phải xén, ít
I could see the other islands. And I said to myself, perhaps I can get there with a boat. Perhaps I can get back to England one day. So I decided to make myself a boat. I cut down a big tree and then began to make a long hole in it. It was hard work. But about 6 months later, I had a very fine canoe.
Đánh đi, anh đang đánh thằng Tử Vi trên này.
I had to get it down to the sea. How stupid I was. Why didn't I think before I began work? Of course, the canoe was too heavy. I couldn't move it. I pulled and pushed and tried everything, but it didn't move. I was very unhappy for a long time after that. That happened in my 4th year on the island. In my 6th year, I did make myself a smaller canoe, but I did not try to escape in it. The boat was too small for a long journey, and I did not want to die at sea. The island was my home now, not my prison, and I was just happy to be alive. A year or 2 later, I made myself a second canoe on the other side of the island. I also built myself a second house there, and so I had 2 homes. My life was still busy from morning to night. There were always things to do or to make. I learnt to make new clothes for myself from the skins of dead animals. They looked very strange, it is true, but they kept me dry in the rain. I kept food and tools at both my houses, and also wild goats. There were many goats on the island, and I made fields with high fences to keep them in. They learnt to take food from me, and soon I had goat's milk to drink every day. I also worked hard in my cornfields, and so many years went by. Chapter 6. A Footprint. Then, one year, something strange and terrible happened. I often walked along the shore, and one day I saw something in the sand. I went over to look at it more carefully, and stopped in sudden surprise. It was a footprint. The footprint of a man. Who could this be? Afraid, I looked around me. I listened. I waited. Nothing. I was more and more afraid. Perhaps this man was one of those wild people who killed and ate other men. I looked everywhere, but there was nobody, and no other footprint. I turned and hurried home. There's someone on my island, I said to myself. Perhaps he knows about me. Perhaps he's watching me now, from behind a tree. Perhaps he wants to kill me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next day, I got all my guns ready, and I put more wood and young trees around my house. Nobody could see me now. But after 15 years alone on the island, I was afraid, and I did not leave my cave for 3 days. In the end, I had to go out to milk my goats. but for 2 years I was afraid. I stayed near my home, and I never used my guns because I didn't want to make a noise. I could not forget the footprint.
Tập trung đứa nào cầm ngam đàn các kiểu cái.
Heard nothing more. And slowly I began to feel happier. One day, a year later, I was over on the west side of the island. From there I could see the other islands, and I could also see a boat far out to sea. If you have a boat, I thought, it's easy to sail across to this island. Perhaps that explains the footprint. It was a visitor from one of the other islands. I began to move more freely around the island again, and built myself a third house. It was a very secret place in a cave. No wild man will ever find that.
Em bảo ngam đàn giết chó đi.
Then one year,
Anh Út ngam đàn giết chó này.
something happened which I can never forget.
Cổ xưa anh auto rồi.
I was again on the west side of the island and was walking along the shore.
Anh hồi sinh ngam đàn trước rồi.
Suddenly,
Em chạy vào đi, chạy
I
vào lại
saw
đi.
something which made me feel ill.
Lồn.
There were heads,
Kìa nó vào kìa.
Tu thuê không nổi nữa.
and other
Kéo
pieces
chuyển
of
khoản được.
men's bodies everywhere.
Thịt con mẹ phá lát bãi rồi kìa.
For a minute, I couldn't think. And then I understood.
Tu đeo có ngàm kiếm thì
Sometimes there were fights between the wild men on the other islands. Then they came here to my island
Về nhà
with
bụng
their
nha.
đấm
business
cặc thì có một con ngàm
to
kiếm
kill
địt
them,
nó có đọc cái auto
cook
anh cũng
them,
cầm.
and
Đánh
eat
cặc gì.
them. Slowly, I went home. But I was very angry. How could men do this? For many months, I watched carefully for the smoke from fires, but I didn't see anything. Somehow, the wild men came and went, and I never saw them. I was angry and afraid. I wanted to shoot them all. But there were many of them,
Đủ búp chơi đi.
only one of me.
Đéo búp về.
Perhaps I can shoot 2 or 3, I
Đi
said
nào, đi
to
nào.
myself.
Có cái lồn
Then
búp đâu mà đi.
they will kill and
Anh
eat.
búp hết mày rồi còn gì nữa à?
Then,
con cặc
one
búp
morning
về.
in my 23rd year on the island,
Giết
I was
auto
out
đã,
in my
không cho nó trong nhà.
fields, and I saw the smoke from a fire. Quickly, I went up the
Đánh
hill
phải
to
tí nữa
watch.
thì
Học
học.
mấy tôm nó.
Lo đéo gì.
There were
Đánh
9
thành
men
Học nhanh đi còn
around
gì
the
nữa, tí
fire,
còn ấy
and
kìa,
they were
chiến trường ấy
cooking their
kìa.
terrible food.
Học có
Thịt
1
bà
tiếng
lại
đồng
giết
hồ
nữa.
7
Then
trận mẹ
these
rồi.
wild men danced round the fire, singing and
Auto tí
shouting.
mà thuê auto đi, địt mẹ đi chiến trường
This
ai
went
auto cho em.
on for about 2 hours. And then they got into their boats and sailed away. I went down to the shore and saw the blood
chưa
of
đi
the
nhá.
dead men on the sand. The next time they come, I'm
Phải
going
gỗ
to
rồi.
kill them.
Rồi đánh em
said
7
angrily.
dương cho báo 6 này.
Chapter 7.
Nó đâu?
Man
Báo
Friday.
6
Vào dương cho báo 6 trước.
For 2 years, I never went anywhere without my gun. I felt lonely and afraid, and had many sleepless nights.
Nó đào.
One night,
Nó
there
đào,
was
nó
a
đào.
very
Con
bad
giết nó.
storm, and I thought I heard the sound of guns out at sea.
Đéo có ai bị kiếm đánh cái
The
lồn.
next morning, I looked out
Đây ngam kiếm anh
and
đi đây gì
saw
nữa
a
à?
ship. It was
Đéo có
lying
búp
on
búp đâu,
its
mình anh đánh
side,
cặc
not
gì.
far from the shore.
Anh búp cả tem còn gì nữa mà mình anh ở đâu?
Quickly,
Có lồn
I
búp đi.
put my little boat in the water and sailed
Mày ở
out.
chỗ nào?
There were 2 dead men on the ship, but no one alive. The bodies of the other sailors were lost in the sea.
Tìm nó đi nào.
I took some clothes and
Đi từ
tools,
từ thôi, tao chạy theo.
and also a box of Spanish
Chín.
gold and
Rồi
silver money.
được rồi, mang ngam kiếm đến nào.
I was a rich man now, but what use was money to me?
17189 ở là bãi
I
cho
could
báo
not
2
buy
à.
anything with it.
Anh Út ngam kiếm rồi.
I wanted people, a friend, somebody to talk to, somebody who could help me escape from my island. One morning,
Đéo có auto này,
I
đéo
woke
có ngam
up
kiếm nó
and
đánh
made a
đéo này.
plan. I'll try to catch
PT nào
one
đi,
of the
mẹ thằng
prisoners
lồn.
of the
Phát đội
wild
nó lên đi,
men,
PT anh đi.
said to myself. He'll be
Em có
happy
đội
to
đéo
be
đâu.
alive,
Anh BT đi đào một mình
and
mà.
perhaps he'll help me to escape.
Đó, nó lên này, kéo nó lên, kéo nó lên, kéo
I
nó lên ở
watched
dưới kìa.
day and night, but for a year and a half, there were no boats. Then one day, 5 boats came. There were about 30 men, and they had 2 prisoners.
Đây đang giết
They
đây.
made their fire on the sand and danced round it.
Nó
Then
ngủ hết
they
rồi kìa, đánh đi.
killed one of the prisoners and began
Vào
to
ngam kiếm đi
cook
nào.
their
Chân
terrible
phải
meal.
cặn.
The second prisoner waited under the trees, with 2 men to watch him. Suddenly, the prisoner
Đây,
turned
anh
and
úp chân
ran.
phải 20 thành đã.
The 2 men ran after him,
50 mày cầm ngăn kiếm
but
đi,
the
mày cầm
other
làm đồn đã
wild
gì?
men were busy round the fire and did not see what was happening. The prisoner ran like a wild goat, and soon I saw that he was coming near the bottom of my hill.
Đéo còn xu.
As fast as I could, I ran down the hill and jumped out of the trees between the prisoner and the 2 wild men. I hit the first man with the wooden end of my gun, and he fell down. But I had to shoot the
Năm có
second.
vật phẩm xu không? Đưa tao 300 vật phẩm xu.
The poor prisoner did not move. He was afraid of the noise of my gun. I called to him and tried to show him
Có
that I
ai
was
chưa on
friendly.
không cầm con ngam đàn bạch tỷ cái?
Slowly, he moved nearer to me. But just then, the first wild man began to get up from the ground. Then the prisoner spoke, and I understood that he wanted my sword. How happy I was to hear words again. I gave him my sword, and at once he cut off the head of his enemy. Hurriedly, we hid the dead bodies under some leaves, and then left quickly. I took my prisoner to my secret cave on the other side of the island and gave him food and drink. After that, he went to sleep. He was a fine young man, about 25 years old, tall and well built, with a kind
Anh vừa hàng
face
năm cái
and a
auto
nice
ấy.
smile. He had a
Mày bút tay đi
brown
một mình,
skin
em bút một mình, em bút tay đi, anh kéo cả mấy con ngam đàn cả cổ sư.
and strong
Anh
white
có auto
teeth.
bút nhưng anh không có ấy. Thằng
I
ác của thằng
decided to
Thịnh.
give him the name of Man Friday because
Đưa
I
auto
first
đây.
saw him on a Friday.
Em bảo thằng Thịnh nó đưa cho. Anh không
When he
lưu.
woke up in the morning, he ran out to me.
Vãi từ lồn.
I was milking my goats in the field, and he got down on the ground and put his head near my foot. I understood that he was thanking me, and I tried to show him that I was his friend. I began to teach him to speak English, and soon he could say his name, Master,
Đây rồi.
and yes and no.
Không cầm tay đâu.
How good
Phải
it
không làm
was
chuyện
to
cho
hear
phải
a
rồi.
man's voice
Auto
again.
rồi.
Later that day, we went back to my first house.
Rồi phải tập trung
We
vào.
went carefully along the beach, but there were no boats and no wild men. Just blood and bones all over the sand. I felt ill, but Friday wanted to eat the pieces of men's bodies which were still on the ground. I showed him that this was terrible for me, and he understood. When we got to my house, I gave Man Friday some trousers, and I made him a coat and a hat. He liked his new clothes very much. Then I made him a little tent to sleep in. But for a few weeks, I always took my gun to bed with me. Perhaps Friday was still a wild man and would try to kill me in the night. At first, Friday was very afraid of my gun. Sometimes he talked to it and asked it not to kill him.
Nó đâu rồi, xem bọn nó đâu rồi.
Friday was a quick learner,
Nó ở đâu?
and his English got better day by day.
170,
He helped me
180.
with the goats and with the work in the
Anh giết rồi, chỗ
cornfields,
170, 180 anh giết rồi.
and soon we were good friends. I enjoyed teaching him, and most of all, having a friend to talk to. This was the happiest of all my years on the island. Friday and I lived together happily for 3 years.
Còn con ngam đàn bạch tỷ
I
này thằng
told
nào
him
vào đi.
the story of my adventures and about life in England. And he told me about his country
Bác
and
chiến
his
trường
people.
auto phó bảng của anh Clone. Theo sau
One
clip
day
vẫn
we
còn đây
were
rể.
at the top of the highest hill on the island, and we were looking out to sea.
Đây auto đây sao anh không lấy
It
auto
was a
anh Thịnh?
very clear day,
Không có theo
and we
sau.
could see a long way.
Vẫn còn theo sau mà.
Suddenly,
Không có.
Friday began to jump up and down, very excited.
19 tháng 5 mới hết hạn.
What's the matter?
Anh
I
thử
said.
hôm ngoại ngày đấy anh có được kéo đâu.
Look, Master, look!
Anh bị ngáo à?
Friday cried. I can see my country.
Đây vẫn theo sau đây.
Look over there.
Vãi lồn,
Anh
thế
bị
không
ngáo
biết.
à?
I looked,
Bị ngáo
Ngáo
chó
thật
à?
mày ạ.
and there to the northwest,
Mẹ có auto
between
theo
the
sau
sea
làm
and
đeo
the
ấy.
sky, was a
Ngáo
long,
lại
thin piece of land. I learnt later that it was the island of Trinidad, and that my island was in the mouth of the river Orinoco on the north coast of South America. I began to think again about escape. Perhaps Friday wanted to go home too.
Đây, để em nhận được tọa độ à?
Perhaps
Trên môn chạy
together
180,
we could get to
180.
his country.
Đừng đi vay mũi cổ.
But what then? Would Friday
nhà,
still be
ở
my
nhà.
friend? Or would his
nhà.
people kill me and eat me?
Ở trong nhà ấy.
I took Friday to the other side of the island and showed him my big canoe.
Và 6
It
dương đá đi.
still lay under the trees. It was very old now, and there were holes in the wood.
Một canh ở bên Nam Thiên Môn ấy.
Could a boat
Nào,
like
đâu?
this sail to
5 cây, 5
your
cây, 5
country, Friday?
5 cây nào?
I asked him. Oh, yes, he answered. A boat like this can carry a lot of food and drink. Then we'll make another canoe like it, and you can go home in it, I said. But Friday looked very unhappy. Why are you angry with me? He asked. What have I done? Why do you want to send me home? But I thought you wanted to go home, I said.
Nó trốn trong nhà rồi.
Yes.
Trốn trong nhà chuẩn bị qua.
But you must come with me.
Anh không nhìn thấy auto theo
Kill
sau
me
rồi, con ngam
if
kia
you
theo
want.
sau rồi à?
But don't send me away from you.
Biết bùa biết thì tao đã không lấy auto của mày rồi.
Then I saw that Friday was a true friend. And so I agreed to go with him. We began work on the canoe at once.
Nó qua không à?
Friday chose
Nó
the
qua
tree
không ơi?
himself. He understood
Rồi, được
wood
rồi.
better than I did. And we cut it down. We worked hard, and in a month the boat
Tử
was
Vi nó
finished.
quay ở bên trong này.
2 weeks later, it
Hồi
was
sinh
in
ngang
the
kiếm anh
sea,
cái.
and we began
Ngam
to get
kiếm em
ready
chết rồi.
for our long journey. Chapter 8. Escape from the island. I was now in my 27th year on the island, and I did not want to be there for another year. We worked hard to get the corn in and to make a lot of bread. We had dried fruit and salted meat and big pots to keep water in. One evening, Friday went out to look for a turtle
Oh,
for
wow,
meat
kiếm anh
and eggs.
Hồi sinh cổ sư đi
But
ngang
in
kiếm
less
về
than
rồi.
an hour, he was
Ngang
back,
kiếm về rồi. Hồi sinh cổ sư
and
đi.
he looked very
Đấy.
afraid.
Trước mặt em đấy.
Xe con
Master.
rồi.
Master, he cried, there's a great ship near the island, and men are coming to the shore in a boat. I jumped up and ran with him down to the shore. To my great surprise, I saw that it was an English ship. But why was it
Đào đi
here?
nào?
English ships
Bên
never
đây là
came
à?
this way. Perhaps they were
Đây là
pirates.
cool này.
Don't
Thằng
let
lồn
them
này
see you
mẹ
Friday,
nó đéo có
I
ấy, nó đào
called.
kìa.
We'll hide in the trees and watch. There were 11 men in the boat, but 3 of them were prisoners. Their arms were tied with rope, but their legs were
Con
free
Nam đàn em
and
đâu
they
rồi?
could
Bỏ lên
walk.
auto đi Nam.
The other sailors
Ra đàn thằng
pushed
Kiem
the
ngon này.
3 prisoners up the
Bảo nó vào
beach,
thoát đi.
laughing,
Bảo nó xuống nào sáu
shouting,
dương thôi, nó không phải chạy đâu
hitting
cả.
them. Then some of them sat down on the sand and began to drink. Others walked
Anh được
away
tỷ 8
to
kinh
look
nghiệm
at
nữa
the
thôi,
island,
địt mẹ mà anh chuyển sinh cốc chết con
and
mẹ
2
nó luôn.
men stayed to watch the boat.
Thì ngồi đấy mà không chết.
The 3 prisoners walked slowly along the beach
12 ô đấy.
and sat down under a tree not far from us. They looked very unhappy.
Cho Nga và Kiem đứng ở đây canh.
Very quietly, I came up behind them through the trees.
Xem nó đào kìa, chạy đi xem nó đào kìa. Một thằng chạy đi xem nó đào kìa.
Don't be afraid, I said. I'm an
Một
Englishman.
680 ra trong nhà á.
Perhaps I can help you.
Trong nhà.
The 3 men
Em phải
turned
mà.
and looked at me. They did not answer
Dân
at
VIP xài giờ này
once.
nhưng mà.
They were too surprised.
Nó trong nhà nó bốp nó
Perhaps
chuẩn
they
bị
thought
qua á.
I was a wild man myself, in my strange
Đánh
homemade
từ bên Nam
clothes
vào.
of
Kìa.
animal skins,
Đó, chân phải anh Nhâm.
and with my
Chân
long
phải,
hair
chân
and
phải vào
beard.
kìa.
Địt
Chân
mẹ
phải nào.
nó chân phải đấy.
Then the
Ở chân
oldest
phải nó còn ấy
man
kìa.
spoke. I am the captain of that ship, he said, and these 2 men are my first and second officers. Last
Chết hết
night
rồi, nó
there
chết hết
was a
rồi.
mutiny, and the
Cái này thì
seamen
chân
took
phải
the
may này
ship
em
from
chạy
me.
đi.
Now they're going to leave the 3 of us here to
Đi,
die
mẹ
on
mày
this
làm sỏi.
island.
Cho
Do
Nam kiếm
these
vào đi.
mutineers have guns?
Em Kiem em chết
Only
rồi.
2,
Vào hồi
he
sinh em
answered,
ơi.
and they've left
Mày
those
cho
on
ra
the
đi
boat.
bao nhiêu ác hồi sinh này.
All right, I said. We'll fight them. But
Em
if
soi,
we
em
get
thấy con
your
Kiem
ship
trước mặt
back
em
for
soi.
you must take me back to England. The captain agreed immediately
Chân phải em ra em phong nhỉ.
and thanked me very warmly for my help. Friday ran back to my house to get all the guns,
Kêu lồn Ken nó bút
and
cả
the
thủ
captain
lên
and
đi
I made
mẹ.
a plan. The first part was easy
Kêu lồn Ken bút cả thủ lên anh.
because the seamen were not ready for a fight. We shot the 2 men at the boat, and the captain shot another man. This man, Tom Smith, was the worst of them all, and he began the mutiny on the ship. Then the captain talked to the other 5 men, and they agreed to help him. They did not really want to be mutineers, but they were afraid of Tom
Mày
Smith.
đứng đây này, mày đứng ở phía nam này, thảo nào con
Now,
Kiem
I
nó
said
đứng
to the
đây,
captain.
nó chạy qua này.
We must get back your ship.
Nó chân phải bắt nó vào luôn.
How many men are on it? 26, the captain replied. And they will fight hard because they won't want to go home. It is death for all mutineers in England. But not all the men are bad.
Nam hoàn thành
I'm
nhiệm vụ
sure
để làm.
that some of them will help me.
Làm cho thằng cùn mình ra bút
Just
ra đứng
then,
ở chỗ bãi
we
lam để
saw
xem nó có
another
chạy ra không.
boat which was coming from the ship
Cho
to
Nga
the
Kiem
shore.
chạy ra rồi, em cho Nga
There
Kiem
were 10 men
đấy
in
rồi.
it, and they all had guns.
Nó ra báo anh à, anh chân phái luôn à.
We ran into the trees and waited. It was a long, hard fight, but by now it was dark, and this helped us very much. We ran here and there in the trees, calling and shouting. The seamen could not see us
Nó chuẩn bị nó đứng ở
and
một
did
đống
not
ở bãi
know
lam này
how
anh Trong
many
ơi.
men they were fighting. In the end,
Nó chuẩn bị
the
vào ấy.
first officer shouted to them,
Ừ.
"Put down your guns
Đâu?
and stop
Rồi, đúng
fighting.
rồi. Ra ngoài, ra ngoài, ở trong mày,
The
ở trong mày.
captain has 50
Trong bãi
island
Long, ở không
people
ấy.
to help
Đấy.
him. We can kill you all."
Mình mày có chân phái, mình mày có chân
So
phái,
the
bố
seamen
mày còn
stopped
20 thành
fighting,
ấy.
And we
Mày
took
có 5
their
thành thế thì
guns.
tuổi lồn.
3 of the men agreed to come back
Đấy.
to the captain,
Mẹ nó núp đấy.
and we
Nó
put
núp ở
the
đấy.
others in my
Đấy.
cave. Friday and I stayed to watch the
Mình vừa
prisoners,
chạy chạy vụ ra thấy nó núp
while
đấy.
the captain and his men went back to fight for the ship.
Kêu anh đại rơi cửa Phật dậy đi.
All night we listened to the sound of
Treo à?
guns and shouting. But in the morning, when the sun came
Đại
up,
rơi cửa Phật treo à?
the captain was master of his ship again. I went down to the shore
20
to
rồi em.
meet him. My dear friend,
Đây
he
để em
cried,
canh rồi. Trong em
there's
canh.
your ship. I'll take you to the ends of the world in it. I put my arms round him, and we laughed and cried together.
Kéo nó ít đam kìa.
How happy I was to
Mẹ,
leave
trái
the
nhìn đâu
island.
buồn kìa. Để thằng danh con nó sang ít
Đéo có
đam.
thằng nào.
My good friend
Đéo thằng nào canh
Friday
ở giữa
came
này.
with me, of course. But we left the mutineers on the island. We decided not to kill them.
Cho một thằng ra
They
canh ở
could
giữa.
begin a new life on the island.
Một ngàn đàn nó canh
I
giữa đi.
showed them my 3 houses, my cornfields, and my goats, and all my tools. Their life would be easy, because of all my hard work for so many years. And so, on the 19th of December, 1686, after 27 years, 2 months,
Dậy hết chưa?
and 19 days, I said goodbye to my island
Cổ sư dậy rồi đúng không? Giết
and
chó dậy đi.
sailed home to England. Chapter 9.
Phun mẹ rồi, thôi mày đứng ở
Home
kia, mày đứng ở
in
ngoài đi nào.
England. When I came back to England, I felt like a stranger in the country,
Đời ơi, em bảo con
Many
ngàn đàn
things
bạch
were
tỷ
different.
cover đi đời ơi.
and not many people remembered me. I went
Con bạch
home
tỷ
to
ấy.
York, but my father and mother were dead, and also my 2 brothers. I did find the 2
Thằng
sons
thiếu
of
trường
one
nó
of
từ
my
Nam chạy ra
brothers.
này, nó từ Nam chạy ra thằng thiếu trường này.
They were happy to learn that I was
Thằng
alive,
thiếu trường nó vào kìa.
and I was pleased to find some family. After some months, I decided to go down to Lisbon in Portugal. I had friends there who could help me to sell my land in Brazil, and I needed the money. Friday came with me. He was always a good and true friend to me.
188 176. Kìa nó vào kìa.
In Lisbon,
Nó vào kìa.
I
Nó
found
vào
the
từ giữa vào kìa.
Portuguese captain
Rồi, giết hết
who
rồi,
took
giết hết
me
rồi.
in his ship to
Đánh
Brazil
con ở giữa kìa,
all
nó
those
quẩy, con ở
years
giữa nó
ago.
quẩy ấy, con Thúy Yên Vũ Tiên nó
It
quẩy
was
ấy.
good to see him again, and he helped me with my business.
Gì
Soon,
đó?
I was ready to go home again by land.
Đảo mẹ đi.
No more adventures and dangers
Tìm
by
thằng Carabit,
sea
tìm thằng
for me.
Carabit.
Carabit
It
á.
was a long, hard journey. We
188
had to cross the
176.
mountains between Spain and France in winter.
Bãi gỗ kìa. Nó
And
đào
the
trong bãi
snow
gỗ
was
6 kìa.
deep. Poor Friday was very afraid of the snow.
Bãi gỗ 6.
In his country, it was always hot.
Để em vào xử lý nó cho.
And he did not
Để em xử
like
lý nó
the
cho.
Chết rồi nhá,
Đấy.
về bãi dương đi. Chết rồi, chết
Back
rồi.
in England, I found a house and began to live a
Ơi.
quiet life. My 2 nephews came to live with me. The younger one wanted to be a sailor, and so I found him a
Anh
place
auto
on a
rồi, thôi anh
ship
auto rồi. Thôi anh auto rồi,
After
em
a
làm gì
while,
làm
I
gì
married
oánh.
Anh thiếu chuyện
and
nha,
had
thiếu chuyện
3
nha.
children, 2 sons and a daughter. Then
Hồi
my
sinh ông em
wife
kiếm em
died,
cái trước cửa này.
and my nephew, who was now the captain of a ship, came home to see me.
Đâu đâu đâu.
Giang ơi,
He knew
Chiếc
that
cửa
I
này
did
á.
not really like a quiet life.
trước cửa.
I have a fine ship, uncle, he said. I'm going
Con
out
Nam kiếm
to
ý
the
của em
East
cho là đứng
Indies,
chỗ bãi Lam luôn đi xem
India,
lúc nào nó xuống phát để
Malaya,
anh cắn chân
the
phái luôn.
Philippines.
Thì em
Why
cho
don't
mình ra
you
bút ra
come
canh
with
mà.
And so, in 1694, I went to sea again, and had many more adventures. Perhaps, one day, I'll write another book about them.
Full rồi. Bọn nó đào hết mà mấy cú còn. Nó có pet cho nó đào cho nhanh.
Retold by Book Box.
Tâm anh nhá.
There once was a small kingdom
Đợi, kìa,
around a lake.
có thằng qua kìa. Nó vào kìa, nó vào đường giữa kìa, nó chân phái đường giữa kìa.
Very hot
Giữa
sun.
giữa ba.
It did not
Rồi,
rain
Cổng
rồi.
ấy.
and
Được rồi, biết rồi.
people grew anxious and went to the king.
Rồi. Biết rồi.
It has not rained for so long. Our fields are barren, said the farmers.
Anh đâu?
There are no
Ơi.
fish to catch. How shall we earn a
Anh
living?
chết à?
Asked
Chết
the
rồi.
fisherman. Save us from disaster, good king, urged the women. As their children
Đêm nay bắt đầu từ đêm nay săn thằng Tử Vi nhá, thằng Tử Vi nó đảo đêm đấy nhá.
The king sent his 4 generals in all directions to look for water. The first general went east towards the sunrise. The second went south to the dust and heat. The third went west where the sun sets. And the fourth followed the North Star.
Đi nào. Đức Chúa Trời rồi.
175 180. 175 180.
They searched day and
Bắt thằng
night.
Calabit đi, thằng Calabit nó phải đào ban ngày, bọn nó không ấy đâu.
High and low they searched everywhere, but in vain.
Rồi đi đi.
3 of the generals returned, empty-handed. But the general who had gone north
187 176.
was determined not to fail his king.
Kìa, trong bãi
At
có 6 kìa.
last, he reached a
Bãi có
cold
6 em chạy lên đi, mình nhắm lên
mountain
thôi.
village. As he sat at the foot of the mountain, an
Ác
old
dương cung
woman
dậy này,
came
vào cái
by
tên à.
and sat next to him.
Em để auto.
Ngán đàn
The
đâu hết rồi.
general pointed at the horizon and said,
Vào vào lại
I
với tên đi,
belong
ngán đàn đâu hết
to
rồi.
a beautiful kingdom where it has
Các
not
đội ra làm.
rained for a whole year. Can you help me find water?
Đâu vào
The
đâu.
woman motioned the general to follow her up the mountain and into a cave. We have no water in our country
Xem nó
either.
vào báo nhá để cắn
She
đấu
said.
hồn nhá.
Then, pointing to the icicles in the cave, she continued, We call this
Nó
ice.
biết được vào chỗ nào.
Take some, and your kingdom will never go
Thịt
thirsty
bà nó ích
again.
đàm vương nghe mày cắn đấu hồn nó ích đàm chết.
The general broke
Mẹ
off
như
a
con cặc.
huge piece. Loaded it
chưa?
onto his horse
Chết
cart
rồi.
and rushed back home.
Địt mẹ on. Vào đánh tái nguyên chiến kìa.
Hoàng là bên Liêu.
By the time he reached the court, the enormous icicle had melted into a small lump of ice. Nobody in the court had ever seen ice, so everybody gazed at it with wonder. This must be a water seed, one of the ministers exclaimed suddenly. The king ordered the water seed to be sowed immediately. While the farmers
Địt
dug
mẹ
a
mày thằng
hole,
Nam, địt cụ mày
the
giờ mày
lamp
on bảo nữa có đi đánh răng.
dwindled in the sun. They swiftly placed the seed in the hole, but before they could cover it up, it had vanished. The farmers there grew confused and worried. They dug deeper and deeper into the earth, all night long, looking for the mysterious seed. At the break of dawn, the king found the farmers fast asleep around a hole. Curious, he peeped in and cried out in amazement, "Wake up, my worthy men! The water seed has sprouted. There's water in the hole." This is how the first well was created.
The Little
Nào bước nào ngang kiếm
Pianist
nào.
by Bridge Kotari. There was once a little boy named Azul. He loved to play the piano and dreamed of becoming a pianist someday. Every Sunday, Azul went to his piano class and practiced every night
Nó đông
at
không? Nó
home,
cửa đông không?
just before going
Ra
to
nha,
bed.
ra.
6 à? Ở bên bài 6
Azul
nè.
became good at it
Từ chân phải
because
ra
he
đã.
was so sincere. He would forget to brush his teeth, but would never forget to practice playing the piano. One day, Vicky, his piano teacher, told him, "Azul, you will perform tomorrow in front of a large audience. You are getting to be quite the pianist. Your fingers move like a squirrel on the piano keys. But there is
Cannabis
something
đâu?
missing.
Chết rồi.
What
Chết rồi
is
á?
it?"
Em canh nó ở
Azul
bài 6 rồi.
just had to
Nhớ cho
know.
nó đảo.
He really,
Cannabis
really
với thằng
wanted
Dương
to
cũng
be not just a good pianist, but a great pianist. Vicky
Thằng chết mẹ
smiled.
á. Địt mẹ thằng chó này.
She whispered
Mẹ,
into
tao hết
Azul's
thiệt là bây
ear,
giờ.
a piano teacher's secret.
Để em canh thằng cannabis là bọn anh cứ về
Play
bảo cây
with
đào
your
đi.
heart, not with your fingers. As always, Vicky pulled out her box
dương
of
đào như thế này.
stickers. Azul held out his hand,
Đào đâu đây?
and Vicky stuck on it
Nó rồi đây.
a gorgeous sticker of a
Nó chết hết
butterfly.
rồi.
There.
Em canh thằng cannabis
Think
rồi.
of this butterfly when you want to play with your heart.
Bọn anh
She
đào đâu?
said.
5 cây 5 cây. 12 dương.
Tiếp đi em.
That day, when all the children played in the park, Azul just stared at his butterfly. He wondered,
Anh đào làm béo thì anh ra đánh đi.
I can play with my
Kìa nó qua kìa, nó
fingers
qua kìa, nó qua kìa. Trước mặt
because I
luôn, trước mặt.
can move them. I can touch the
Rồi nó
piano
qua thì kệ cho nó qua
keys.
đi, cho nó có thật đông nữa đi.
How can I play with my
Nó không
heart?
chân phải ngang kiếm nó chả làm lồn
I
cái đời cả.
can't even see my heart.
Đây để em canh thằng cannabis cho. Thằng cannabis cứ để em. Thằng cannabis cứ để em no.
For the first time in a long time, Azul
Cannabis
went
thằng
to
Dương cũng
bed
đào.
without playing the piano.
Xong nhiệm vụ kêu em.
The night before his performance, he did not practice because he did not know how to play with his heart.
Giấu này kiếm đi. Giấu này kiếm.
When Azul woke up, he looked for the
Nó
butterfly
đi cùng nó
sticker.
bãi 6 nó bọn nó có người bảo
Oh
kê này anh
no,
trong.
the sticker
Thằng
was
kêu
nào,
kêu
bãi nào?
một thằng vào đây với em.
Now Azul
Kêu một thằng vào đây
was
với
Nó bay nào,
em.
nó bay nào. Nó bay nào.
really
Bãi 6
mad.
em giết hết rồi. Kêu một thằng nữa vào đánh
Sáu
cùng
cây.
em thôi,
He
anh đào đi.
tried playing
6
the
cây ấy,
piano,
kêu một thằng vào cùng em thôi.
but his fingers
chết rồi.
would just not move.
Hồi sinh ngang kiếm Nam ơi.
However,
Ra
that did
dương
not
ra
stop
12 dương hồi
the
sinh ngang kiếm.
clock from ticking. Soon it was performance time. The piano was in the middle of a round stage, surrounded by rows of people.
Đâu, 12 dương Nam Kiếm đâu?
Azul walked
Nam Kiếm
onto
cover
the
đấy, hồi sinh Nam Kiếm trước
stage.
đi. Này còn hồi sinh Nam
Rồi.
Trần Nam trước nữa.
Sat on the piano bench
Hồi sinh nhạc nào?
Nam
and
Kiếm này, em lại hồi sinh
closed
Trần Nam
his
trước.
eyes for a
Vãi
second.
cái lồn em bấm vào cái đấy có thấy lồn đâu. Tưởng hồi sinh nhạc anh em chạy vào.
Remembering Vicky's words, he thought of the butterfly.
Bật nhìn thấy người cặc
In
đâu.
the quiet of the auditorium, Azul heard the flutter of wings.
Đấy anh quạt chết 12 dương chưa?
Chết rồi.
A butterfly sat on his
Thấy chưa?
shoulder
Ui, anh Đàm.
and started to hum a tune. His
Kìa,
fingers
nó chân phải vào kìa, nó
began
chân
to
phải từ góc vào
move
kìa,
by
góc.
themselves.
Chân phải vào kìa. Đập thằng audio trước.
Còn mẹ.
His heart
đâu?
began to play
Đây,
the
anh ngoài
butterfly
từ từ anh ra anh chân
song.
phải này. Ơi. Anh đang đánh.
Nó đi cùng rồi sao mà nắm.
The Greatest Treasure by Amit Garg. One day, Peter found a treasure map. Hooray! I'm going to find this treasure and have some adventure, he exclaimed.
Kêu thằng Nam cầm ngang cái kiếm đi.
Ở đây em vào ngang đàn này đi
Peter
anh Quân
set
này.
off.
Bạch tỷ cover ấy.
He walked a long way and
Ngang
finally
kiếm để anh
reached the forest.
làm chân phái 20 thành đã, bây giờ mới đang 10 thành.
Một
There,
kêu thằng ấy
in
ra
that
bãi gỗ
line.
60 em.
Làm ơi. Làm.
You are strong
Em ra em mua cho anh
and
300 vật phẩm
courageous,
xu nào.
said Peter to Lion.
Địt mẹ đã bảo một thằng ra bãi gỗ 6
Will
đi,
you
đứng
come
đấy làm
with
con cặc
me
gì đéo
on a
nào.
treasure hunt? Lion agreed
Đâu?
and joined Peter.
Nó có mỗi một thằng này cũng lại cứ phải
The
sợ.
forest
Chết hết
was
rồi đâu
dense
nữa.
and dark.
Một thằng cái lồn nguyên một đám đấy, một thằng con cặc.
Peter was afraid,
Bãi nào? 6 gỗ dưới nào anh giết rồi.
but with Lion by his side,
6 gỗ ở Bắc Thiên Môn ấy.
Địt mẹ.
when the two finally reached the mountain,
Thằng Long lên X bãi gỗ 6
Then
thiên môn kìa.
you have excellent vision and can alert us to dangers, said Peter to Eagle. Will you come with us? We're looking for a treasure. Eagle agreed and joined Peter and Lion. The mountains were tall and craggy. Lion slipped, but Peter was swift enough to give him a hand and pull him up. Eagle, with his sharp vision, watched every step they took. Soon they reached the valley below, where they met sheep. Will you join us in our search for a treasure? Peter asked Sheep. And keep us warm when it's cold? Sheep agreed and joined Peter, Lion, and Eagle. A cold wind swept across the endless meadow. They all huddled against Sheep, who kept them warm and cozy. The four finally reached the desert, where they met Camel. You are called the Ship of the Desert, said Peter to Camel. Will you help us get across and join the treasure hunt too? Camel agreed. Peter, Lion, and Sheep mounted the camel and set off happily across the vast desert, with Eagle enjoying the spectacle from above. Camel began galloping, and everybody cheered with excitement. Crossing the desert on Camel's back was thrilling. The five finally reached the ocean, where they met Turtle. Can you help us cross the ocean? Peter asked Turtle. We're on a treasure hunt. Turtle agreed and joined Peter, Lion, Eagle, Sheep, and Camel. The rough waves almost drowned the party, but Turtle skillfully transported them across. They met Owl on the other side. Owl spoke from his ancient wisdom. Congratulations! You have found the treasure. Where is it? They all exclaimed in surprise. Together, you have passed the forest, climbed the mountains, dared the valley, braved the desert, and crossed the ocean. You would never have done it without one another. They all looked at each other and realized that Owl was right. They had found friendship. Indeed, they had found the greatest treasure ever. Rosa Goes to the City by Ahmed God. In the middle of a big city, there was a small zoo, and inside lived a baby elephant. Her name was Rosa. The zookeeper loved little Rosa very much and cared for her in every possible way. Many visitors came to see Rosa and watched in fascination as she ate a dozen bananas in one go. Rosa was well looked after, but she missed the company of other elephants. One day, after feeding Rosa, the keeper forgot to lock the door of her cage. Soon she was out of the zoo. First, she came across an ice cream vendor standing by the roadside. He saw Rosa and ran away. The curious little elephant stuck her trunk into the icebox. Something tasted so cold, sweet, and delicious that she simply gulped it all down. Rosa kept moving about, her eyes searching for someone. Finally, inside a shop, she saw a herd of elephants on a television screen. Friends, she thought, and marched into the TV shop. Everybody inside the shop ran out, leaving her alone. Rosa tried talking to the elephants on the TV screen, but they didn't reply. Confused and disappointed, she walked out. Back on the street, she saw a coconut seller selling coconuts. Wow! I've found a ball. It's playtime now. She cried and kicked a coconut high into the air. It flew across the road and landed right beside a boy playing in the park. Rosa ran across the road, determined to get her coconut ball. Cars screeched, buses honked, and drivers began to yell at each other. Rosa had created a traffic jam. The traffic police moved in to take control. The zoo was informed. Ignoring the commotion around her, Rosa simply ran into the park. She stopped in front of the little boy, who was smiling at her. He giggled and patted the elephant. Rosa trumpeted back with excitement at her newfound friend. By now, the zookeeper had reached the park. Seeing Rosa in the open space of the park, he understood that she would never be happy in a cage. The zoo transferred Rosa to a protected forest, away from the city, where many other elephants roamed freely. Rosa grew up very happily. Now, instead of watching Rosa behind bars in a cramped cage, visitors could see her among lots of trees, still gulping down.
The First Christmas. Retold by Eliane Pinheiro and Maura Hurley. Around the month of December, children like to imagine what happened on the very first Christmas ever, even before Santa Claus. I know the story well, for I was watching it all from above, in the dark sky on the evening of December 24th, oh, so many years ago. I am the Star of Bethlehem. I was requested by angels to shine brighter than all the other stars that night, to tell the whole world that a very special child had been born to spread goodwill and peace. And this is the story of the first Christmas. All was quiet that night as I watched the three kings traveling slowly on camelback through desert lands. Just then I beamed brightly as the angels had told me to. The kings noticed me in the east. They couldn't resist my brilliance. Perhaps they had heard that a star like me was going to show the way to the Son of God. Traveling through the night, the kings met shepherds watching over their flock. We are following that incredibly beautiful star there in the east to find the place where the Son of God has just been born. From there, they all traveled together, watching me, the brightest star in the sky. Finally, they arrived at a small town called Bethlehem and saw that I was gleaming radiantly above the barnyard of an inn. All was quiet and peaceful. Their caravan entered the barnyard to see the tender little baby lying in a simple manger fluffed with hay. Next to the baby were Mary and Joseph, his mother and father, and many farm animals. The kings offered the precious gifts they'd carried from afar for baby Jesus. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The shepherds kneeled on the ground to pray. They were grateful for the gift of love and the purity the baby brought. Many people offered gifts after that. I suppose this is why, on Christmas Day, people around the world enjoy offering gifts as a sign of love and hope. And they try their best to bring happiness to others, as Jesus did all his life. Now, I'd like to wish you a holiday season that shines as brightly as the star of Bethlehem.
Tihar Jail. The jail warden led me through a dark, winding passage. I was almost suffocated by the humid stench of the open gutters that lined the walls. Soon, we came to an opening where hundreds of people, all dressed in striped rags, stood looking at me in wonder. The warden suddenly broke the silence by yelling some commands at the crowd. Where there was space for 2,500 prisoners, more than 10,000 were herded together within the walls of Tihar Jail. I thought to myself, if there was a hell on earth, this was it. That very moment, I realized why I had been posted as the Inspector General, or IG, of the infamous Tihar Jail in Delhi. I had to do something to improve the condition of the prisoners. I knew that it would be the toughest challenge in my career. I began to visit the prisoners every day. I was told that the IGs posted there before me never set foot inside the jail premises. In the beginning, the prisoners would crowd around me and not speak much because they feared the wardens. I would sit among large groups and discuss their problems. I knew that apart from improving the hygiene and general condition of the prison, I had to also keep the prisoners busy so that they would not have any time to get into trouble. I started by introducing some simple but effective routines for them, such as walks around the prison, sporting events, and cultural events like singing and acting. I soon formed a group of trusted officials who helped me. A major problem that my team and I faced was that of religious groupings and enmity between them. To put an end to this danger, we began to celebrate festivals from all religions, such as Rakhi, Holi, Ramzan, and Christmas. This helped the inmates to accept each other's religious practices and even feel good about participating in them. I also made sure plenty of books were available. Soon, many universities began to offer courses for the prisoners. We introduced meditation and helped them think positively and plan their life after prison. I was posted in Tihar jail between 1993 and 1995. Those 2 years were the most fruitful years of my life. On my last day, as I went on my usual round of the prison, I saw what could only be described as an ashram of Indian rishis. Hundreds of hardened criminals who had committed the worst of crimes were sitting peacefully in meditation. The grounds were green and filled with sunlight. Inmates were either preparing for exams or learning a craft that they were passionate about.
The Elves and the Shoemaker, retold by Bookbox. Although Peter Shoemaker worked hard and was kind to everyone in the village, he could never earn enough money making shoes. On this particularly cold and snowy day, all he had left in his workroom was enough leather to make one last pair of shoes. That evening, Peter carefully cut up his precious leather and laid it aside for the morning, when he would sew them together. The sun rose the next morning, and Peter was ready to start work. But to his great surprise, an exquisitely crafted pair of shoes sat on his work table. "What magic!" said Cecilia, his wife. They quickly put the shoes in the shop window, for the holiday shopping season had just begun. As luck would have it, the shoes fitted the finicky Mrs. Sniggins perfectly, and she paid a generous sum for the fine fit. With the money, Peter went to buy more leather, enough for 2 more pairs. That evening, he once again set to work cutting his leather, and he left the pieces on the table when he went to bed. Hoping for a good design, he fell asleep dreaming of shoes. When he awoke early the next morning, he again found 2 finely crafted pairs of shoes before his eyes. Customers bought these up quickly, for they were masterpieces. Now Peter could buy enough leather for 4 pairs of shoes. This magical business went on for some time, and Shoemaker's name became well known for the finest shoes in town. These days, life was much better for Peter and Cecilia. One day, Cecilia said, "I wonder who's been helping us so much." Peter announced, "Tonight, we will hide in the workshop and see what goes on there." And so they did. At exactly midnight, 2 tiny elves tiptoed in and began to work, swiftly making the fine shoes. They were shabbily dressed and weren't even wearing shoes themselves. Before daybreak, they had already dashed off, leaving several pairs of shoes ready for sale that day. Peter and Cecilia were grateful to these little elves and worried about them working so hard in such cold weather. So Peter set to work making 2 tiny pairs of shoes, and Cecilia stitched 2 warm sets of clothing for each of them. On Christmas Eve, instead of leather pieces, they set the little shoes and clothes out and hid themselves again. At midnight, the elves popped in and saw the new clothes. In a flash, they had them on their little bodies. They were so happy that they laughed and chuckled and danced right out the window, never to be seen again. Peter continued making shoes every day, and he and Cecilia lived a very happy and contented life for many years, as did the elves.
The Whispering Palms by Deepa Gangwani and Tina Suhanik. Mori was a little girl with big brown eyes. She lived with her parents in a beautiful coconut grove next to a small blue lake. Every morning, she balanced a big empty basket on her head as she walked down to the lake. Her mother followed with the laundry, and her father brought the big fishing rod. Her mother washed the stone next to the lake, while her father went fishing. He dragged the net ashore, and they collected the fish in a big basket. Sometimes a turtle got stuck in the net, but Mori always hurried to the rescue. One sunny morning, while fishing with her father, Mori said, "If we catch so many fish, one day there won't be any left." Her mother laughed and sent her off to school. Under the shade of the trees, Mori's mother fell into an uneasy sleep. She dreamt of a lake with no fish, while the wind in the palm leaves whispered, "The waters in the land have always taken care of your family." So you have to take care of them in return. She awoke with tears in her eyes, for she didn't know how to bring up Mori without selling enough fish. All afternoon she sat, weaving coconut mats and thinking about her dream. That night, Mori heard her parents whisper as the oil lamp burned deep into the night. The next morning, her father gave her a smaller basket. "How can we carry all the fish in this little basket?" Mori asked. "We will only take as many fish as will fit inside this basket," he replied. Maury was puzzled. When she came back from school, she was happy to find her mother making soap and oil from the coconuts. Maury swiftly climbed up a tree to get more coconuts. But her mother cautioned, "Don't pluck them. We must only use what the tree gives us." Her father added, "We have taken only fallen coconuts for these things. Look, we've even made this soap with a jasmine flower inside." From that day on, the family made brooms from the palm leaves and wove mats from coconut fiber. They took soap, oil, and only a small number of fish to the market. When Maury grew older, she loved to carve tiny turtles out of coconut shells and always wore one around her neck.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I grew up in a family of sports lovers. My father adored tennis. He was a national champion. And my mother was a badminton player. After school, our whole family met at the tennis coaching center. My mother would come from home dragging along a bag that had everything from hot milk and fruits to tennis clothes. My younger sister Rita and I would run all the way to the court right after school. We would sit together on the side bench and try to finish our homework while waiting for our turn. As a teenager, I traveled all over the country playing competitive tennis. I didn't have much money then and had to travel in unreserved train compartments. The travel would be exhausting as I hardly ever got a place to sit. However, the benefit of third-class travel was that students got the ticket at half price. But it was hard to get a hold of the form that would allow me to do so. The secretary of the Tennis Association issued these forms and was a very important person. He liked to prove his importance by making applicants wait. Sometimes I wasted an entire day waiting to see him. I had homework, exams, tennis, and often extra fitness sessions, but had to sit in a queue which never seemed to move. I would beat my fists angrily on the bench, feeling helpless. On one such occasion, after waiting for hours in a queue, when I finally managed to see the secretary, I couldn't hold myself back anymore. I told him in a serious tone, "I have learned from you that I must always respect the needs of others. When I grow up, I will never make anyone wait like this. I will value others' time." The secretary was furious, and can you guess what he did? I was already a national junior champion in tennis, and as was the norm, I was waiting to be nominated to play at Wimbledon. It had been my dream to participate in this prestigious event. But the secretary chose someone else instead of me. I felt sorry for myself, but decided to work harder on my studies instead. I soon began to top my class. Today, when I look back at my life, I thank the secretary for teaching me such a valuable lesson. He helped me become a better police officer who valued people's Crane Bedi. The governor called for me. I did not quite know what to expect. He called me inside his office, looked at me and asked, "Kiran, do you know why I have called you?" I swung my head from side to side and said, "I did not." Then he smiled slightly and said, "Kiran, the Asian Games are hardly a year away, and the Delhi traffic condition is chaotic. I want you to take over as the Delhi traffic chief." I did not know how to react. This was a huge responsibility, and it turned out to be one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. And of course, it would win me the nickname Crane Bedi. The 1982 Asian Games that were held in Delhi were a prestigious event for India. I had to draw on every bit of my energy to regulate the traffic. I was out on the roads every morning by 8 a.m. in my white Ambassador, which was fitted with a wireless set and a loudspeaker. I held a microphone in my hand to give instructions whenever needed, while being driven around the city. During this period, I worked 19 hours each day. I would return home exhausted and collapse on my bed. In the morning, I would get up fresh and full of energy, ready to make my best effort again. It became a common sight for the people of Delhi to see me on the roads every day, clearing traffic jams. People loved it and welcomed the change. As the police department